Hi, and welcome to Snake Therapy. I'm Shira, and this is Nymeria, the blue-eyed leucistic Colombian rainbow boa. There are plenty of great tutorial videos about keeping snakes as pets on YouTube, but here on Snake Therapy, our goal is to integrate snake education with reflections on human mental health and well-being, highlighting the therapeutic benefits of the human-animal bond. So today we're going to talk about the fundamental responsibilities and commitments that come with keeping a snake and how understanding and accepting those responsibilities can transform a pet into a therapy animal. So whether you're here because you're considering getting your first snake or because you already keep snakes and want to improve your knowledge base and the bond with your animal, this video will provide you with some valuable information and give you some insight into the rewarding benefits that you can get by being a responsible keeper. So, let's slither on into the good stuff. If you're new here and are wondering what exactly snake therapy means, you should definitely check out our very first episode, What the Heck is Snake Therapy, to get the full in-depth explanation. I'll put a link to it right up there. But it's pretty much what it sounds like. Although most people think of therapy animals as being innately furry animals, this is absolutely not the case. Snakes can actually provide us with powerful physical, mental, and emotional health benefits. Like any other animal, snakes have personalities and the ability to bond with their humans. And being knowledgeable about their needs and behavior are the crucial elements to creating that bond. It's not just ethical to be responsible about how we care for snakes. That responsibility can provide you with a sense of empowerment and fulfillment. We touched on some of the basics of that idea in one of our earlier episodes, but let's do a quick review and then we'll dive deeper. The most important thing above all is to do your research on the type of species you want or already have, and specifically regarding size, environmental parameters, activity type, feeding, and handleability. There are more than 3,000 different species of snakes on this planet, and although far less are commonly kept in captivity, they're all going to be slightly unique in relation to those 5 points. It should be said here that there's no single right or wrong way to keep snakes, and you'll definitely see a lot of opinions out there on the subject. But what matters most above all else is that we do our best, and that we stay open to learning and improving our methods. This applies to snake care as it applies to ourselves. In keeping an animal in captivity, you wield great power. And as we all know from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And I'll add to that with responsibility comes commitment. The word can sometimes be paired with some negative connotations, but its definition is simply the dedication to a cause or activity, which inevitably means obligation to something. Entering into a relationship and keeping an animal as a pet is a commitment, and being honest and realistic with yourself about your ability to meet the obligations of that commitment is so important. In terms of snake ownership, one of the more neglected aspects of the commitment is not accounting for their lifespan. Unlike most other pets, snakes live for decades. The average lifespan of a snake is between 15 and 20 years, with some species living a decade longer. So when deciding to get a snake, you'll need to think first about yourself and your own future. Of course, we never truly know what our future holds, but if you're planning to move to a different continent to retire or go away to college in a few years, or you're just unsure what the next phase of your life will be like, a snake isn't the right pet for you. Now, a lady doesn't reveal her age, but I can tell you that I'm very aware that my snakes are going to be with me when I'm old and gray, and that most likely I will need to stop getting new ones in the next decade or so to ensure that I can care for them for their entire lives. A part of the responsibility and commitment of snake ownership is regular maintenance. Generally speaking, snakes require a little less constant care and maintenance in comparison with most mammalian pets. Although this will depend on the particular species, but there will be certain basic maintenance that will always be a necessary commitment of your time and energy to ensure the welfare of the animal. So let's talk about those. Remember, a happy and healthy animal means that the therapeutic experience for you will also be happy and healthy. Creating a daily regimen for checking on the state of the enclosure and the health of the snake is not just responsible, but it's therapeutic for you because it can offer you some structure and purpose. My personal maintenance regimen with my snake happens at least twice a day. I ensure that all equipment is working correctly, enclosures are clean, and everyone looks good. I check to see if anyone is going into shed or if water bowls need cleaning and refilling. It brings me joy to look in on them, to talk to them, touch them, handle them. They're my children, and they rely on me for everything. So knowing they're okay is absolutely therapeutic to my mental health. I highly recommend you set a calendar for yourself where you keep track of your snake's enclosure cleaning, water bowl cleaning and refilling, feeding, and shedding schedule. Even if you only have one snake, it could be easy to forget when you did those things last. If you have more than one, it's absolutely essential because they may not all be on that same schedule. So let's go through those scheduled actions in a bit more detail so you can be sure that you're giving your snake the best care you can. Thanks. Most snakes don't eat more than once a week, so that means they don't poop that often either. That's nice, right? No stinky litter box to clean every day, no bags of poop to carry around several times a day until you find the trash can. That being said, they still pee regularly, and keeping their enclosure clean is vital to their health. Their whole enclosure is their litter box. So without regular cleaning, it's extremely unsanitary for them and for you if they've been slithering around for days in that stuff. Spot cleaning is something you should do every day or two. This is when you remove any poop, shed skin, or urates from the enclosure. You can throw on some gloves and dig around in there, pulling out any bits of soiled substrate at the same time. If you need a spot clean poop that's a little extra messy with some cleaning solution, make sure that it's 100% non-toxic and does not contain ammonia. A mix of vinegar and water in a spray bottle works great for this, but even with non-toxic solutions, be careful using it if the snake is in the enclosure. For spot cleaning, I usually spray the paper towel or cloth, not the enclosure itself, to ensure I don't get any overspray on or near the snake. They're very sensitive to chemical smells, and you could hurt them if the solution got on their bodies. Deep cleaning can be done once a month. This is when you remove the snake and all the substrate and other items from the enclosure so you can really clean and sanitize everything. Have a plastic tub ready to put them in while you do your cleaning to keep them safe and away from the cleaning solution. Make sure the bin is snake-proof. I'm going to make an entire video devoted to their incredible talents as escape artists. But trust me, these guys will shock you in their ability to squeeze their way out of things you never thought they could. Bins like this that have seals and multiple latches are my absolute go-to. I'll put a link to this one in the description. And for the record, I don't make any commission off of suggested products. Just trust me on this one, it's worth spending the extra money to make sure you don't lose your snake when it decides to go on a grand adventure while you're occupied cleaning. Oh, and speaking of future episodes to come, could you take a moment to subscribe, like this video if you're enjoying it, and hit that notification bell? That way you get all the good stuff that's coming up. Okay, back to the deep clean. Remember, even if the snake is not in the enclosure, you should use that non-toxic cleaning solution that won't leave a residue or odor. After that, you'll want to sanitize to ensure any and all bacteria is removed. I recommend something like Rescue, which is used in many veterinary clinics. Make sure to follow the instructions on the bottle and that the solution is completely dried before putting the snake back in. Use this opportunity to sanitize the hides and other items in the enclosure as well. For branches and wood, you can scrub them with the vinegar and heat them in the oven on low for a few hours, or put them out in the sun to dry. This is also a great time to sanitize your water bowls. And speaking of water, snakes require plenty of clean, fresh water on offer at all times, with one or two exceptions. Rosy boas, for example, actually do better when they're only offered small amounts of water once every week or two. But make sure you do your research and talk to the breeder to ensure you're clear on this. Otherwise, clean water is essential at all times. If you're using tap water, make sure it's tap water that you yourself would drink. Filtered spring water is best, of course, as tap water often has lots of chlorine and heavy amounts of minerals that can cause that nasty white buildup on the surfaces of their bowls. Make sure the water bowl is not just topped off regularly, but that it's all replaced with clean water. Imagine if you left a glass of water out for a few days. Would you want to keep drinking from it? Probably not. And snakes have a tendency not just to soak in their water bowls, but to pee and poop in them too. So plan on checking the bowls every day to make sure they're not soiled, and then completely change the water every few days. I usually take the bowls out to clean them with natural dish soap at least once a week or whenever they're soiled. If your snake is a species that needs a higher level of humidity, then as long as the water doesn't have any pee or poop in it, you can dump it out into the substrate to give your humidity a little boost. Finally, make sure you have a large enough water bowl that the snake can completely submerge its body in it if it so desires. Many water bowls marketed specifically for reptiles are kind of expensive, but really all you need is a bowl that's sturdy and not easily tipped over. So I usually use these heavy-duty dog bowls. They come in multiple sizes and are pretty cheap. I'll put a link to them in the description. The larger your water bowl's surface area, the more it can help boost humidity in the enclosure as the water evaporates over time. You're wiggly today. Speaking of humidity, remember how one of those crucial elements to snake welfare is understanding the humidity parameters that the particular species needs? Well, your responsibility goes a bit further than just that knowledge. In order to be sure your humidity is correct, you're going to need tools. Firstly, get a quality digital hygrometer, or two even, to put in your enclosure. Make sure to place the hygrometer where the snake is, low down by the substrate for terrestrial snakes, and higher if the species is arboreal and spends most of their time up in the branches. Digital hygrometers will more accurately measure the humidity than those analog dial type ones. To be honest though, I've tried a ton of different brands, and I have two in almost every enclosure because I've found that they often read differently from each other. It's something that kind of makes me crazy and distrustful of them on the whole. I still haven't found ones that I trust inherently, so if you've tried any that you feel really confident about, please let me know in the comments. If you live somewhere with a drier climate, it's going to be crucial that you keep up with humidity maintenance. And if you're struggling to get things right in the enclosure, consider getting a humidifier for the entire room that the enclosure is in. It's good for your health too. Another key piece of equipment is a pressure mister, like this one. Trust me, your hands and wrists will thank you for it, and you'll need to do less work in the long run. Using household spray bottles isn't very effective. You could also invest in an automatic mister or fogger that works on a timer. This is great if you leave town for a day or two and can't spray down the enclosure. A super important aspect of humidity maintenance is the substrate you use. First and foremost, make sure it's not cedar, pine, or fir, ever. Those are toxic to snakes. But if your snake needs high humidity, then be sure to use a type of substrate that holds humidity well and isn't prone to mold. Aspen is super cheap and commonly recommended, but it can mold very easily, even when it's just a little slosh of water from filling their water bowls. I never use it just for that reason. My go-to is cocoa husk, but cypress mulch is even better for humidity, or you could do a mix of those and a moisture-rich bioblend soil that's specifically made for reptile and amphibian enclosures. And you can also avoid mold by turning over the substrate a bit when you do your daily maintenance. Adding some sphagnum moss is a great way to boost the humidity as well. If you're still having trouble with humidity, you could also create a humid hide so that your snake can choose to soak up that extra humidity whenever they need it. This is especially great when they're in shed. As you can see here, Anu loves hers. She stayed in there for almost a week, and when she came out, her shed was absolutely perfect. I've noticed that some of my snakes won't use them, but I tend to offer them anyway at shedding time, just in case. This humid hide allows you to create a microclimate without having to worry about spraying everything down several times a day. Without proper humidity, shedding problems and respiratory infections can threaten the health of your animal. That's why this is a crucial part of the responsibility of snake ownership. Let's talk about heating. I've noticed that lots of people just get heat mats or overhead heating elements and call it good, but they don't actually regulate those elements. This is not okay. There's just no way that you can ensure those temperatures will be correct without measuring and regulating them at all times. Sure, a thermometer on both sides of the enclosure is a good first step, but it's just not enough. If you have a thermometer on the warm side up on the wall of the enclosure, that's not giving you an accurate measurement of the heat where the snake is. And it's also not telling you what temperature your cool side is either. You must use thermostats with your heating elements to ensure that your snake not only gets a range of temperatures it needs, but that it doesn't get too hot or burn itself. If ambient temperatures aren't correct, the snake will curl up on that heat mat, but that only gets their bellies warmed. If it's not regulated, they can literally burn themselves because their entire bodies aren't getting the correct temperature. Even worse is putting exposed heat lamps inside of enclosures. I've seen photos of animals that have climbed onto the heating element and suffered horrific, even fatal burns. If you're set on having the heat lamp inside, make sure you use protective cage around it. But honestly, it's still not the best idea. My larger enclosures have at least one, even 2 or 3 thermostats with probes set where the snake would bask to make sure that the heating elements turn themselves off when the correct temperature is reached and turn back on when necessary. I then have a thermometer on the cool side to verify that I'm not overheating the entire enclosure. Remember, the snake needs a range of temperatures. If ambient temps are too hot or cold, the snake could have digestive issues, illness, or worse, and at minimum, be really stressed. Use a heat gun to test surface temps to ensure the snake doesn't get burned, but those are just surface temps, not ambient temperatures. Heat mats are not always sufficient to get correct ambient temperatures, especially in a large enclosure. So test, test, test until you get it right and before you put the animal in its home. This isn't optional. It's a life or death matter and it's your responsibility. Look, I'm not trying to stress you out here. Snake therapy is about joy and anxiety relief, but you won't get the benefits of the experience if your snake is hurt or dies because you haven't been responsible. Some folks will say that lighting is not required for snakes, whether it be UVB or just illumination. And it's true that some snakes don't require UV light, but here's the thing, all living creatures have circadian rhythms, the physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a 24-hour cycle. These natural processes respond primarily to light and dark. If it was dark all the time, you wouldn't know when to sleep and when not to, and your circadian rhythms that affect appetite, growth, healing, and mood would get all screwed up, right? I found that my animals have benefited from having a regular light cycle. So all of my enclosures have lighting on timers, on and off for 12 hours. It's also nice to be able to see your snake and enjoy the beauty of its enclosure, and lighting helps that. But make sure you don't forget to turn off any overhead lights in the room they're in at night as well. Halogen basking lights can provide heat during the day as well as illumination, but definitely use those thermostats on the other heating elements if your light bulb provides heat. If you don't, you could literally end up cooking your snake. I'd never do that to you. No. All environmental elements, whether it's lighting, heating, or humidity, can affect your snake's appetite or its ability to digest its food. So let's talk about feeding. Feeding snakes is a rather hotly debated topic in the reptile keeping community, but it is my opinion that we should only feed pre-killed animals to captive snakes for a number of reasons. I'll elaborate on those in a future video, but in the terms of our topic today, this point relates to the responsibility you have to keep them safe. Snakes are ambush predators in the wild. They surprise their prey, and therefore they have the upper hand. But in captivity, putting live prey with teeth and claws in a box with a predator means that prey is possibly going to be prepared for a fight and could easily deliver a nasty injury to your snake, even if the snake ends up killing it in the end. To me, it's just not worth the risk. Another responsibility regarding feeding is keeping track of feeding schedules and tracking what they ate. Though you can generally expect that snakes will eat from once a week or 2 or even 3, depending on the age and species, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of things to keep track of in my life. So 2 weeks could go by and I could easily forget exactly when that last feeding was. Likewise, snakes don't always keep to that schedule you set. Sometimes they're not interested in food when they're in shed, so you may need to shift their schedule to account for that. Snakes refuse food for other reasons too, and if you don't pay attention to this, you could be ignoring a warning sign that something isn't right with their health. It's also helpful to keep track of what they're eating and to know when you change from one size or type of prey to the next. It's not necessary to give the snake a variety of foods, but considering that in the wild they're definitely going to be eating different kinds of prey, I do think it's a good idea to change it up if possible. I offer some of my snakes a rat one week, a chick another, and a mouse the next. Would you want to eat the same food every meal of your life? Probably not. PSA, please don't power feed your snake just because you want to get them bigger faster. It's a great way to shorten their lifespan, just as it would be for a human. I'm including handling and bonding under responsibility and maintenance, because guess what? If you don't handle your snake with some regular frequency, then they're not going to be used to being handled, which means that when you open their enclosure, they'll either be expecting food or just maybe scared and defensive. Snakes aren't social animals by nature, and certainly not with humans, so if you want the benefits of snake therapy, it's part of your responsibility to put the time into socializing them. If you haven't watched my video on snake handling and behavior, I'll put a link to it right up there for you. It's got my top rules to live by to ensure an awesome experience is had by both you and the snake. But even if you just have a snake that's a display animal, as in it either doesn't like to be handled or you just have it to look at, you should at least be taking them out a couple times a month to check their bodies for any signs of poor health, illness, or injury. I've mentioned before that it's your responsibility to understand how big your snake is going to get so that you plan for how much space it will need by the time it's full grown. If you get a snake as a baby, you should count on sizing up its enclosure at least once, if not 2 times in its lifetime. Enclosures can be pricey, so it's important to plan accordingly. Baby snakes actually do much better in smaller enclosures because it makes them feel safer. It's not a good idea to just get their adult enclosure and stick them in there right off the bat. They'll be stressed out, and that stress can affect their appetite, health, and temperament. So how do you know what enclosure size is appropriate for snakes after they're babies? The key is to make sure that the enclosure is big enough that they can stretch out completely if they want to. If they're fully stretched out and are the length of the face and the side of the enclosure, definitely time to size up. You want to make sure they have enough room and things to climb on that they can get a bit of exercise. Snakes can get obese from both overfeeding and from not being able to move around enough. And just like it is with us, obesity is a danger to their health. Some snakes are definitely more active than others, but I truly believe in offering them opportunities for exercise and enrichment as much as we possibly can, regardless of whether we think they'll use it or not. The Lauren here is a Dumeral's boa, which is a terrestrial and heavy-bodied species of snake. He's one of the least active of my animals and doesn't need a ton of vertical space to climb. However, I still provide him with branches, and I've definitely caught him using them on occasion, so I'm glad I did. And if your animal is at all arboreal, it's your responsibility to provide them with the appropriate opportunities to perch. They'll also feel a lot more secure if you offer them some fake plants to act as cover. Remember, snakes are not aggressive, but they can be defensive if they don't feel safe in their environment. Enrichment also offers your snake a chance to use its brains. It's a joy to watch your animal checking out its environment, and I believe this encourages their development of personality as well. When you do your monthly cleaning, you could take that opportunity to move some of the items in the enclosure around a little bit, or add something new so they don't get bored. They'll want to investigate the new situation, and it will stimulate their brains while giving them some exercise as well. I'll be making a video about the benefits of enrichment for both snakes and humans soon, so make sure you have those notifications turned on so you don't miss it. I'm going to wrap this up now, but to recap, in comparison to many other pets, snakes probably require less consistent tending to than others, but this does depend on the species. There are absolutely types that are more challenging or hardier than others, and it's therefore so important to understand what they need before you get one, and to assess whether you have the capacity, time, and energy to provide it for them. Snake therapy is not just about what we get from them, but the benefits we receive by giving to them. It's about how they can help us reflect on ourselves and encourage us to be better humans overall. Being responsible does require work, but I believe it's a powerful tool for self-improvement, self-awareness, empathy, and compassion. It's an opportunity for the joyful and rewarding knowledge that you're caring for another being and giving it a good life. I hope this video helped you, even in some small way, and inspires you to not only do your best for your animals, but to do your best for yourself. Increasing our knowledge and self-awareness and capacity for care is something we can all benefit from, whether or not you have snakes. Thanks so much for being here with us. I'm grateful you care enough to watch, and so is Nymeria. I'm Shira, and we'll see you again next time for more snake therapy.